There are 3 reasons why I will never probably get a power meter. Number 1, because in 1976, Luke Skywalker turned off his power and his computers, and he just used the Force. As soon as I saw that movie when I was 7 or 8 years old, I thought, that is how you do it. Red Leader was using his computer, and look what happened to him. So I trust my body, and I listen to my body, and I just use these zones. Now, I do wear a heart rate monitor because it calculates the calories that you burn, and also it gives you a rough estimate of where your zones are. But there's basically 5 zones. The first zone is the recovery zone, and what happens is that's where you're just riding like a beach cruiser at the beach with your girlfriend. Hopefully your wife doesn't find out. But that's the recovery zone, and where you're just kind of noodling and not pedaling very hard. And sometimes I'll use rollers for that. And other times I'll just go for a super easy bike ride. Your heart rate hardly even goes up. Zone 2 is where you can ride all day long, but you are pedaling. You're at conversation pace. And that's a ride that if you ride a long distance, you're basically going to be in zone 2. Zone 3 is where you're really huffing and puffing. You're in the aerobic zone. You're kind of going at it. But you could basically do this for an hour or so, 2 hours, that type of zone, and you find that your heart rate goes to a certain level. And for me personally, and this is so individual, don't even go based on the numbers, but for me, anywhere between 140, 150 is where I could basically last for a long time, you know. Zone 4 is where it gets interesting, because zone 4 is where the athletes that are really good can actually last an hour in zone 4. I cannot. Zone 4 is where you hit that point where the lactic acid in your legs is just burning so much you're almost gonna have to stop. And for me, that is around 165 to 170. Those are my numbers, heart rate. But at a certain point, it doesn't even matter what my heart rate is saying. And the reason why is because I'm probably gonna stop. So I have a hill that I use in my area where I live, and I will do intervals. And that's where I'm in that zone 4, where I'm really trying to train myself. Now, how much power am I producing? Am I doing 200 watts, 300 watts? Who knows? I'm pedaling as hard as I can. And that's why I just wouldn't spend the money on a power meter, because I have my heart rate and I have the rate of perceived exertion. I'm going as hard as I can. And generally speaking, that hill is about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And that's my interval. That's where it goes. Zone 5 is, of course, where we're sprinting. Who the heck is looking at their power meter when you're sprinting? Just go as hard as you possibly can for those 30 seconds and, make sure you don't crash. The second reason why I'm probably never going to get a power meter is because the cost. Now, the cost of a power meter is actually relatively inexpensive compared to, say, 8-10 years ago. But it's still an expense. It's still expensive. If you were to take the $500 that you would pay on a power meter, or $1,000, and invest it in a pharmaceutical company right before a disease that will last us years, you could have millions of dollars by the end of those couple years. So if you're listening to this, and you probably aren't, but if you're listening to me and you're 19 or 20 years old and you're thinking of getting a power meter, I could tell you that there's a very small chance that you're gonna be in the Tour de France, and there's a very small chance you're ever gonna win the local crit. Take that money and invest it in your future. Then when you have extra money later on, you could buy a power meter. The third and final reason why I'm probably never gonna get a power meter is because I don't do the type of races that a power meter would be beneficial. So if you're gonna do a time trial, where what a time trial is you go by yourself, you have to learn to pace yourself for a certain distance, and then when you get back, you go throw up in the bushes. You could stare at your power meter and keep track of your power. That's the type of race that you would want to have a power meter in. Or if you're in a road race and you know that you have to maintain a certain pace for a certain period of time, then a power meter is worthwhile. But the only type of racing that I ever do is cyclocross racing right now. And at my age, I don't know, man, maybe I have 8 years left, 10 years left at best. And the thing about cyclocross is it doesn't matter what your power is, but there's a lot of skill involved as well. as getting around corners and techniques. So you can actually maybe do a little bit less power but have better technique and actually do much better in cyclocross. Now at the end, you're still going to go throw up in the bushes, but it's there's just less competition. If you're doing criterium racing, then a power meter would be great in terms of training, but you really are not going to be looking at your power when you're in a crit. You should be watching your wheel, because your wife is going to be yelling at you from the side that you better not crash because your job depends upon it and your whole family, you know, is dependent upon you, and why are we here this early in the morning? Those are the types of problems you're going to have. So a power meter you shouldn't be looking at when you're in the criterium. I know, because I was young once. So power meters are a great tool. It's undeniable. They're fantastic. I just don't think they're right for me. Do you use a power meter? Why did you decide to use a power meter, and how do you use it? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm curious to know. Now, as a final thought, what is your criteria for a good bike ride? If your criteria is to produce a certain amount of watts for a certain amount of time, then you're simply going to need to buy a power meter. But for me personally, at the end of most rides, I come home. If the wife asks, "How was your ride?" she doesn't want to hear about how much power I produced or how much power I have. She doesn't care. Your wife doesn't care either. They know that you have no power. None of us have power. The wives have power. So the criteria is really, did you have a good time? Did you come home with all your bones still intact? How much laundry has to be done? How hungry are you? And how much are you gonna actually eat? If it's a good ride, the dad's happy and everybody's gonna be okay for the remainder of the day. And that is the criteria of a good bike ride.
Today's video sponsor is Lactigo. Lactigo is an effective, fast-acting topical gel with menthol and carnosine that helps people maximize their athletic performance and muscle recovery. It helps you recover faster during and after athletic activity. One Lactigo bottle covers around 10 full body applications. Apply Lactigo directly to the desired muscles 45 minutes before your activity or workout or competition. And then apply another round of Lactigo after your activity to further aid in muscle recovery. There will be a link down in the description if you want to look at this stuff. Check it out, read the research, see what you think.